All right, let's get this shit started. It is Saturday night and time for me to show up, so I'm showing up. And actually fire this up real quick. The thing that has been occupying my thoughts all week is the question of presentation in game design. You see all these people that claim it doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter. Everybody knows it matters. Otherwise, we wouldn't bother doing graphics and sound effects and music and all of that shit. Clearly, it matters. It's just that most of the time, you're not focused on it. It's something that in human factors engineering, it's what we call a hygienic factor. Hygienic factors are things that nobody notices as long as they're there. But as soon as they're gone, everybody notices. And once people notice these things aren't there, they don't want anything to do with your product anymore. It's like, what would be a good example? Apple recently added to the iPhone that Siri could learn from any application on your phone. So you have to go into the settings for every single application and tell it, no, I don't want Siri learning from this application. Please do not train on my bank application. I don't want you eavesdropping on my sessions with the bank. Please do not learn from my porn viewing habits. Whatever it is you want to tell Siri not to pay any attention to. Now, personally, I don't have to do that because I use an Android. And the reason I use an Android is because fuck Apple. But imagine if when Apple made this change where Siri could learn from all of your different applications, imagine if they just didn't put that switch where you could turn it off. Nobody would notice for a good long time until somebody pointed it out. Once they actually do notice, once they actually went, oh, I don't want it doing that, I'm going to go turn that off. Oh, you can't. Now nobody wants to use your product anymore because the ability to turn off the things they don't like is kind of important. One of the things in particular about games that drives me fucking nuts is you open a game and the music is blaring at this insane volume level. And you're like, holy fuck, where's the settings menu? And it doesn't have one. It doesn't have a settings menu at all. And this is usually a symptom of this game was originally released on mobile, where you're using headphones and you have volume buttons right under your thumb at all times. Yeah, but now you've put it on PC, and when you put it on PC, I have multiple applications running. I can't turn the entire system volume up and down every time one application decides, I don't give a shit, you're going to have to alter the system volume to mess with me. Now, the good news is you can right-click on the speaker icon in Windows, and you can turn individual applications down. But I find it really obnoxious when I start up a game and the first thing I have to do is right-click the speaker on my taskbar and turn the volume down to 10%. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you that your music is that goddamn loud? It's really annoying. And a lot of the time I will just shrug my shoulders and bail out of the game and not do anything. Because sometimes you turn the music down to the point that it's tolerable, and then you try to play the game and you can't hear what's going on in the game because you've turned the application down. But there's no settings menu. So you can't turn down just the music. They just haven't provided that option. So those are games that I turn off and uninstall usually. And in a lot of cases, a lot of stuff in Potion Craft, which I've been playing for the past couple of days, is hygienic stuff. It's the whole medieval art style and the clean line art of the customers as they come in, and the antique nature of the map that you're working on. All of this stuff goes together, and what you really have is you have a fairly simple little game where it's just like you put the path you want to follow in this place. You say, here's how long I want to follow that path. And then you move the path into another place, and you say, now follow the path. And you've only got a couple of tools to mess with. You start out with very few tools, and then and you gradually just kind of get more as the game progresses, until you've got void salts and moon salts and sun salts and philosopher salts and life salts. I'm closing up on the end of the game. I've been playing it for the last, what is it, the 19th? I've been playing it for the last 4 days, just kind of off and on. But it's only in the last 2 days that I've really buckled in and been playing the hell out of it. Because I started out just kind of not knowing what I wanted to do in terms of allocating my experience in the skill tree. That's another thing. There are all of these decisions in Potion Craft that don't really matter. Like, fundamentally, when you come down to it, you start out with a few different ingredients. You have an ingredient that goes up, and an ingredient that goes down, and an ingredient that goes left, and an ingredient that goes right. And they all work in sufficiently high resolution that this is all you need to get anywhere all over the map. As long as you have enough of these 4 ingredients, you can go anywhere. You can make anything. Now, you can't make the best possible version of a lot of stuff without getting really, really detailed. But if it's just a question of making a potion of any strength, of whatever type, yeah, you can do that with just those 4 little bits, as long as you're willing to use like 80 of them on your way around the map. So you have the solution to everything all the way from the beginning. They just gradually add ways that you can do it faster, ways that you can do it more efficiently, and they do it in interesting ways. And it's all just what path to follow, how long do you follow it, and you can mix into it at various points. As you're following the path, you can go, okay, at this point, move back toward the center of the map. Or at this point, let's erase some of the end of the path. At this point, let's rotate clockwise. Let's rotate counterclockwise. Let's restore the amount of potion that you're carrying. And you've got all of this. You've got all of this stuff that you can use to just kind of modify what you're working on. But None of that's really necessary just for making the potions. You can go around and make the potions just fine with just those initial 4 ingredients. So there's nothing to stop you from just ignoring all of the rest of the options, all of the rest of the things that you can do. But of course you won't. I mean, you'll use them as they go, and they're introduced in small enough bits that you get a good handle on them before you end up being faced with another thing. And that kind of, I think that sums up the sort of idea that I'm trying to pursue on my own games, which is the game is not hard to learn and it's not hard to play. What it is a gradually increasing level of my Clip Studio Paint layout has changed a bit. I'm not sure why. Probably just because of a software update, but regardless. Or it might just be my imagination. Who knows? You can never tell. But yeah, let me jump in here and kind of talk about this a little bit. When you start off in a roguelite, in a horde survival game of any sort, there's kind of, you have this inherent timeline. That's like the beginning of the level and the end of the level. So the end's over here and the beginning's over here. And at little points along this way, like the end of your level would be like 20 minutes. And the beginning is at 0. Now in the middle, you have your 10-minute mark. 10 minutes is too long to wait for something to happen. You also get your 15-minute mark. You got your 5-minute mark. In between those, you got your 2.5 minutes. And you get your 7.5. Here's your 12.5. Here's your 17.5. And you can see here that all of these just kind of lend themselves naturally to an escalation, where it can all fit together. Every 2.5 minutes, you just increase another slightly more interesting thing. And you do that over the course of your timed level to keep the player interested. And the first time that they're playing, you can introduce mechanics every like 30 seconds or so. Like when you start off playing Vampire Survivors, which obviously is the template for all of this, you're just standing there in the middle of the screen, and then here comes an enemy over here, and here comes an enemy over here, and here's one up here, and one up here, and you know, oh, these guys are coming for me. I better stay away from them. And because they're fairly far apart, you don't really have to worry about a horde. It's a few seconds later that they start appearing in little groups, that they start appearing in rings that are fairly tightly spaced around you. You start seeing walls of enemies that extend all the way down the screen or all the way across the screen. You start seeing these various ways of fencing you in and forcing you to use specific tactics and approaches to deal with things. And you just, the first time you see something, you go, what the fuck? How do I deal with that? And then once you figure out how to deal with it, you're just like, oh, well, that's simple. And then you can see it over and over and over again, level after level after level. And it's just one of these things where what you ultimately come down to is there are 40 little changes in a level that happen one at a time until you get to the end. So if you're going to have 10 levels, which is what I'm planning, then what you're looking at is 400 little changes, 400 little things that get opened up. Now, these things that get opened up map pretty well to like achievements and accomplishments and things like that. But that's not really something I want to go too far into. The real question is, in your progression, I was talking about this on the Discord server earlier this week. I was saying that ultimately what you want whenever somebody plays a roguelike is you want them to play for 1 to 3 minutes and to get a little bit farther every time, because what happens is for the first minute they think, oh, this is just like every other game like this, and then around the 2-minute mark they go, what the fuck? And then around the 3-minute mark they die. So it's kind of, there's this 3-step process that happens every time you get to a new point that you've never gotten to before, which is, oh, this is easy, what the fuck, and oh, this is bullshit, and then you die. And then you have to start over. But you have the various upgrades and strategies and tactics and whatnot as you go. You just have to have the pieces to put that together. And what I'm really getting at here is, if you don't get those pieces right, your game's going to be garbage. And you can have a game with lots of enemies and lots of levels and lots of weapons. And if you don't get that pacing right, where something new pops up every couple of minutes, several hundred times, the game's just not going to be fun. I mean, we've all played games that aren't fun, games that have their one big idea isn't really that big of an idea. I've had what I think is the big idea for my game, but I still don't want to talk about it because I'm not 100% sold that it's going to work the way I want it to work. And if it doesn't work the way I want it to work, then it's not the big idea. I'm still probably going to do the same thing. But I'm going to need a separate big idea to go alongside of it. Or at least like a couple of other little ideas. I'm so tired of being sick. I'm very, very tired of it. I don't want to be sick anymore. I don't know why I'm still sick. But this is part of my development process that is frequently frustrating to people that I'm trying to work with. Because I know that like everything is built on top of everything else. If you don't get that foundation right, and when you try to build on top of it, it's just going to fall over. So, so I'm currently working on this foundation, which is just, right now, the big thing is the enemy class. To write that somewhat more legibly. At least as legible as you can get with my shitty handwriting. So we've got this enemy class. And the thing about the enemy class is the performance of this class really, really matters, because there are a lot of them. Out of all the stuff you've got hanging around in the game, there are more enemies than anything else, pretty much. at least in terms of important stuff. And you may have a lot of particles flying around the screen, but they're just particles. They're not complex game objects. So I'm really kind of thinking in terms of how does the enemy perform? How does the enemy act? What are the different types and layers of enemies? Because you have to have this hierarchy. You have to have this fundamental idea of a tough enemy and a weak enemy. And you've got to scatter all of your different enemies in the middle there, and they have to be visually distinct. You have to be able to tell them apart just by looking at them. Just so you know, when you look at the enemy, you go, oh, that's a tough one. He has to have a different shape. He has to have a different way of moving. There have to be clear and obvious indicators that this enemy is different from other enemies. And I haven't got all that worked out yet. And you don't need to have it all worked out. I mean, fundamentally, I only need to have one level worked out. So I want to go into beta, or at least into open beta, with 5 levels. Okay? But to get stuff done and really make progress, all I need is one. I need one level. I need one level, one character, and one weapon. With that, I can design what the level looks like. I can design how the enemy behavior looks. I can get a solid sense of what exactly the environment is going to look like. And I could start tweaking and tuning and making things work effectively and thinking about, is this fun? Is this something that people are going to want to do for hours on end? Is it something people are going to come back to for weeks or months or even years? And I think as a game developer, the most important thing is to make it something that you would come back to for hours and days and weeks and months and years. Because if you wouldn't come back to it, I mean, designing for an audience that isn't you is sometimes necessary, depending on what exactly you're designing. But when you're building games and you're a gamer, building a game you don't like playing is a really terrible idea. You should think your game is fun. Now, I'm fairly clear a lot of the time when I talk about how products are built. I tell people all the time, you are not your customer, because you're not. But usually the people I'm talking to with that are a technical audience. They're a technical audience, and what they're frequently trying to put out there, the business clients that I typically have are trying to put out informational content. And when you're giving information to an audience, that audience is not you. They can't be you, because you're giving them information they don't have. If you were in the audience, you wouldn't stay. You already know this shit. You would leave. So the audience is very much not you. And you need to have a picture of who that audience is, or you can't meet their needs. You can't do the stuff that they actually want you to do. And in gaming, one of the issues that a lot of games run into is, in order to build a game, you've got to play the game day after day after day. Forever. And playing the game all of that time tends to make you really, really good at it. And when you get really, really good at the game, you sit there and you go, oh, well, this would be good, and that would be good, and the other would be good. But you're really good at the game, and the average person is just not, you know? And that's something that you need to bear in mind. That's something that you need to keep thinking about as you're working on the game. Like, I've got this little driver over here, which is nothing but a... like, the only thing it is, I showed it on my last video, you can click to spawn enemies, and when you click to spawn enemies, they just chase after the little Godot icon in the center of the screen. And the frame rate actually stays just above 60. A little bit faster than 60. And I can put lots and lots of mobs on the screen. But eventually, those mobs start to they start to clog up the system. And when you look at the number of mobs I got on screen right now, okay, that's a lot. That's a lot of enemies to have on screen. That's a lot of enemies to be expected to deal with. And we're currently about halfway to where the system starts to have problems. And you can see how it kind of self-organizes into a little hexagonal structure. They're almost kind of... they're piling up like sand, more or less. This isn't a bad gravity simulation when you think about it. What I'm not sure about is whether I should be trying to implement some kind of pathfinding. Now we're starting to get close here. You'll see that we are now closing up on 400. And look, right at 400, frame rate tanks. We go down to like single-digit frames. But if I just pull 10 of them off, look at the frame rate go up. $383. We're having some issues keeping it 60, but we're doing okay. At 375, it'll stay at 60, no problem. It'll just sit there at 60 frames a second with 375 mobs on screen. But when you tack in another 15 or 20, it just goes to hell right when you hit 400, pretty much. And of course, it's not going to cooperate at this point. Look at that frame rate drop. Take it back to 400, we're back to 60. There's a memory allocation thing going on here, I think. If I take this up to 450 and then pull it back to 430, does it recover? No. What if I pull it back to 420? Does it recover now? No. Does it recover from 410? Doesn't recover at 400 either, no. Still doing bad. 380, we're doing fine. That's interesting. I wonder what is causing this. My gut feeling is, I think it's something in the collision detection. But one of the things that I'm asking myself is I'm looking at all these mobs on screen and I'm going, do I need that? Do I need that many mobs on screen? Is that really a thing that's necessary? I haven't done a whole lot of experimenting with this because I've just been sitting around thinking. Just kind of putting together the decision tree for it. Because that's the way that I make these decisions, is to just kind of sit around and think about it and go, well, what are the possible options? And if it's this, well, then what? And if it's that, well, then what? And if it's the other thing, well, then what? And I'm not sure what the then what is. But one of the things that I keep coming back to is I keep looking at this and going, if I can't have 400 mobs on the screen, and I need to have 400 mobs on the screen, then that's a problem. But if I can't have 400 mobs on the screen, and I only need 200, I don't fucking care. The engine is doing a surprising amount of work here, incidentally. So now we're at 400, and just bam. It starts to dump, but then it recovers. Dumps again. And we're now having trouble staying above 30 frames a second. We're dropping a lot of frames. And I don't know why. I think it's because they're all unable to get closer to their target. Because if we pull all of these out, which we can only do one at a time, although it's pretty cool watching them all disappear one by one. If we pull all of these out one at a time and we get down to where it's just a few of them, and to where it's just a few of them and the icon that they're chasing, you can see that they're all just like running into the icon and sitting there. It'd actually be faster if I just shut it down and reopened it. Let's do a restart. There we go. You can see they never stop jostling around trying to get closer. All of them are trying to get closer to that object, and they never stop. And I think that may be part of it, because they're constantly going, well, what do I do to try and get closer? And there's all of these collisions, and it's collisions with lots of multiple objects, and you've got to check everything, and I think that may be a very large part of it. Oh, it's worth noting. We've got all of these individual guys here. Come over to the game workspace, and you'll notice when I click, it creates a brand new node over here. And as I click again, it starts adding more and more of those. And we end up with a bunch of them. And you can see that they're basically just numbered. And if I now come in here, and let's see how many of these we can actually get on screen. If I come in here and I start deleting them, you see they get pulled out, but there's no guarantee that they'll be pulled out in the same order that they appear. They typically do, but that's not necessarily the case. But one of the things that was fairly instructive for me was that I started thinking of scenes not as scenes, but as subtrees. And what I mean when I say subtrees is that when you instantiate a scene, you're hanging all of the nodes in that scene off of the current node, or off of a node, because you can instantiate it anywhere in the tree. But then you access that part of the tree just like it was a natural part of the tree, which is fascinating and very useful. It's one of the many things that the developers of Godot did the way that I would have done it. And I was just like, it can't be that easy. There's got to be some convoluted horse shit. There wasn't convoluted horse shit. It just fucking worked. It worked exactly the way I thought it should work. I was very happy with that. Anyway, this is all just the rambling horse shit that I've got going on in my head at the moment. And because I'm hip deep in code and design and all of that sort of thing, it's gonna be kind of hip deep in horse shit. That should be the new name of the show, Hip Deep in Horse Shit. You know? But, I would really like to stop being sick. I've been sick way too long. Anyway, but yeah, that's the, that's the general rambling crap that I have for this week. There are two useful things in there, I think, which are looking at the remote tree to see the instantiated nodes pop up, and thinking of scenes as subtrees. I think those are the only two things I said in the entire last hour that have had any value. So, yeah, if you stuck around long enough to, like, hear either of those things, then fucking great. You're one of my people. But do the little YouTube dance, like, comment, subscribe, all that happy horse shit. And that's pretty much all I have to talk about. Kind of feel like I didn't do much this week. Well, I did. I did a bunch of stuff for Wednesday, but that was only like, I wrote like 30 or 40 lines of code, and that was like, doesn't feel like I did a lot. That's kind of how development is sometimes. It's just you shine a spotlight on it, and you go, man, I really didn't get much done this week. Well, of course you didn't. You were doing other stuff. But, yeah. I feel fantastically unproductive at the moment, but it is what it is. And that will be my showing up for the week. thank you for showing up. I appreciate you every single week that you do. And okay, bye.